Hello, everybody. I'm Skip Alzheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we watch old 16mm films and think about them. In this case, the film we watched was from the Mogul Brothers collection via the Oregon Archive, and it was Chesapeake Bay. And thank you, Rick Kay, for giving us an update on all the things that you saw, as that you live in that area. It's kind of interesting to look at footage from the late 20s, early 30s, basically 100 years ago-ish, and kind of see what survived and what didn't, because lots of things have changed. There were two world wars, and one world war since that footage was shot. World War. Also, thanks Rick Kay for he's one of the people that keeps an eye on comments, and if someone's obviously a spammer or a troll, he tries to keep them at bay, which is a thankless job. So thank you for that. Let's learn about a horrible epidemic that claimed many doll lives. This is Jean and her dolls. Enjoy.
Hiding from his sister Jean. We want Jean to see him. Jean doesn't see him. She is busy with her doll clothes. She leaves them to dry in the sun. Jean tells Nancy Jane her fate will be good. Jean is all dressed up, for she is expecting a visitor. Betty, her friend, very soon. She must get ready. But here is Frank again. Why is he running? Oh, he sees Betty coming. Betty and her doll Beatrice. Jean welcomes her friend Betty. She thinks Beatrice, Betty's doll, would like to play with Nancy Jane. But who is this running behind the tree? Why, it's Frank again. Why is he listening so closely? He hears Betty say, Beatrice burned her finger yesterday. I have been worried about my dolly too, says Jean. Do you see any red spots on her? I think she's getting measles. Measles? Red spots, says Frank. That gives me an idea. Oh, but look. Nancy Jane is sleepy. It's time for her nap, Jean says. But first she must have her milk. Beatrice is sleepy too. A bottle of milk for Beatrice. A bottle of milk for Nancy Jane. And so to afternoon nap in the warm sunshine. Nancy and Beatrice side by side, tucked safely in bed for a nice, long afternoon nap. And lunch together. Do you take cream in your tea, asked Jean. Oh, yes, thank you, Betty answered. It's very good. And you? No, I take lemon, Jean replied. And so Jean and her friend Betty are having a quiet lunch together while their dollies sleep. But there is Frank again. Where is he going? He is over by the doll. Why is he smiling to himself? What does he have? He has a box of crayons. He takes out the red crayon. Now what is he doing? Oh, look, he is making red marks on Nancy Jane's face. Jean, look. Look at what Frank is doing. But Jean doesn't see him. Red marks. The measles. Frank has given Nancy Jane the measles. Look, Jean, before Frank goes away. But Jean doesn't see him. Poor Nancy Jane. She really has the measles now. But when will Jean see what Frank has done? Will Jean see now? Look, Jean. Look at Dolly's face. And she does. Nancy Jane, what has happened to you? You really caught the measles. What shall I do? Asked Jean. I'll call Mother. Mother, come here, please. But who is that behind the fence? Yes, it's Frank. Look, Mother, says Jean, Nancy Jane has the measles. Measles? I tell Jean. Someone has painted the measles on Nancy Jane's face, and there he is. It's Frank. He looks for a place to hide. Not in here, Frank. After him, Betty. After him, Jean. Here he comes, right through the clothes on the line. Here he comes again. What fun everyone is having. But where is Frank now? Where is he hiding? There is his shadow. After him. After him, everyone. But we can't find him. Where is he? There he is. There is Frank's shadow. Now we have him at last. Give up paper and a crayon, a red crayon. Frank wants to know what is going on, too. But you just get back to work, Frank. You'll know in just a minute. There, Jean is all finished. What does she have? It's a sign. Laughs, and Frank joins in.
Yeah, that film was all sorts of problems. The title fell off. The ending fell off. It was all splicey. And it's beautiful Kodachrome. And so what I've noticed is Kodachrome can sometimes get brittle. And I'm sure this film got showed a lot. So it would, each time it got shown, a little piece would fall off. And they would repair it. I don't know if you noticed at the beginning, there was just this generic Jean and her dolls against burlap. So somebody in the film library, this is from Buffalo Public Schools, they were like, well, this film gets used a lot, so I need to salvage it, and they just shot, a little title footage, Jean and her dolls. So there you go. All right, so the next thing we got set up is behind me on the scanner. This is called Playing Good Music. And I haven't watched it, but I feel like playing good music, not like that music that you listen to on the radio or in the jukebox. Here it is. Playing Good Music, String Quartet. Enjoy.
You are listening to the Fine Arts Quartet play a Schubert scherzo. Incidentally, a scherzo actually means a playful movement or a musical joke. The four musicians in this quartet play well together. They are a good team. Let's see what it takes to be an effective member of this kind of a team. These are the main points to watch for. First, the techniques used in playing the individual instruments. Second, some of the ways the composer combines the voices of the four instruments to express his musical ideas. And third, how each member of this quartet team, while playing his own part, is constantly aware of the other three parts. This film will not only demonstrate techniques, but will help you enjoy music more. Let's take a look at the individual instruments and how each is played. Each is played with a bow. Let's see what happens when a bow is drawn across a string. The player determines the pitch by varying the length of the string which vibrates. He does this by pressing the string against the fingerboard with his finger. Only the portion between his finger and the bridge will vibrate. The shorter he makes the string, the higher the note. Let us leave the cello a moment and take a look at the violin. Ordinarily, one string is played at a time. However, two strings can be played melodically at the same time. This is known as double stopping. See how the player uses two fingers in various combinations. With a more vigorous stroke, 3 and even 4 strings can be played at once. This is known as playing chords. With all 4 instruments playing 2, 3, or 4 notes in various combinations, it is possible to have as many as 16 notes being played simultaneously, thus producing both greater volume and richer sound. One of the characteristics of a string tone which makes it pleasing is the effect known as vibrato. Vibrato is achieved by rocking the fingertip back and forth on the string in an even manner. This is the way a tone sounds without any vibrato at all. Now here is a very slow vibrato. Here is the normal way of producing vibrato. Let's hear the entire quartet play a phrase without vibrato. And now let's hear it with vibrato. Notice how much richer and warmer the tones sound. As the music becomes more intricate, greater speed and facility is required in fingering and bowing. Playing a stringed instrument demands much of the same kind of mental and muscular coordination that is required of an athlete. The eyes, the arms, and both hands are used in coordination by the players. Except for minor variations because of the size of the instruments, fingering and bowing are the same for the violins and the viola. Because of its size, the cello can't very well be held under the chin. Since this is so, the large part of the box is away from the player near the floor instead of being toward him. You'll notice the position of the fingerboard in relation to the player is therefore reversed. To play louder, the player bows closer to the bridge and uses more pressure. To produce a softer sound, he bows closer to the fingerboard and uses less pressure. One must be careful in playing loudly that the bow is moving fast enough to give an even pressure. Otherwise, you get a tone that breaks. By playing notes of varying length and rapidity, the player produces varying rhythmic patterns. In pizzicato, the strings are plucked instead of bowed. Through the use of a mute, which dampens the vibrations of the instrument at the bridge, a change in tonal color can be achieved. We have observed some of the basic techniques for playing a stringed instrument. Now let's look at a typical quartet score. Here is a portion of the score of Wolf's Italian Serenade. The parts played by each instrument are shown. See if you can follow the parts as they are played. The four voices can play the same notes in unison to emphasize a single idea. Any of the instruments can play a solo accompanied by one or more of the others. The theme, like a ball, can be tossed from one player to another. In orchestras, there is a conductor. All of the players in the orchestra follow the conductor. In the quartet, while the first violin usually gives the signal to start, each of the other three players can assume leadership when his part so demands. The other players then take their cues from him. Now, as we see the Fine Arts Quartet in the concert hall, let's observe how each one of the players uses his instrument. Watch for the various ways in which the composer uses the four instruments. Notice, too, the give and take, both in leadership and in the carrying of musical ideas between the members of the quartet, as they play a portion of the finale movement of Mozart's Quartet in G major.
That was kind of more fun than I thought. The idea of playing was kind of great. Now let's bring things down a little bit and talk about local civil defense. Enjoy.
Men have always sought defense against a common enemy by uniting their resources and ingenuity. Even in the very earliest times, the concept of a civil defense was deeply rooted in the anxieties of the community over the terrors of the day. Walls around the cities of old were attempts to safeguard the civilian population from enemy onslaught. To inhabitants of the medieval community, the catapult and the ballista were terrifying weapons, and the only possible defense against them was stronger and higher walls. In our own pioneer days, civilian communities developed within the protecting walls of the stockade. Today, no barricade is high enough or strong enough to protect us from a possible onslaught of weapons that dwarf any in history in their destructive potential. To reduce the effectiveness of these weapons, should they ever be used in enemy attack on our nation, a civil defense effort that challenges our ingenuity and resourcefulness is necessary. In the United States, responsibility for civil defense planning at the federal level is lodged within the Department of Defense. The development of civil defense programs is a joint responsibility shared by the federal, state, and local governments. This film will consider civil defense on the local government level. Hometown, USA. A church. A school. A factory. An office building. Today, these and other structures bear a marking on which the survival of our country might well depend. Shelter, protection from dangerous radioactive fallout, the inevitable result of nuclear warfare. To provide enough shelter space for the community is the first and foremost consideration of local civil defense planning. The National Fallout Shelter Program has as its goal a shelter space for every man, woman, and child in the United States. In cities and towns throughout the country, public shelters have been surveyed, marked, and provisioned in a continuous program of shelter expansion. With availability of shelter protection for its citizens, the prime local civil defense responsibility is that each municipality or rural district must organize its local existing government agencies for emergency operations to meet the threat of enemy attack or natural disaster. This is the objective of civil defense planning. All over the nation, local government officials meet periodically to discuss civil defense emergency measures. The chief executive or governing body of the locality is responsible for civil defense protection for that community. Appointed by the mayor or appropriate town or county officials, the civil defense director acts as staff man, coordinating the various emergency activities. The logistics of survival are complex and varied. They depend on technological knowledge, which has developed at an incredible pace, spurred on by the unique dangers of our time. Survival materials and equipment are researched, engineered, and fabricated. However, craftsmanship alone will not do the civil defense job. This can only be accomplished by firmly organized emergency skills and an awareness by each local government official of what his department can do to meet civil defense needs.
Let's hear first from our Chief of Police, Mr. Condon. Harry?
The police function in civil defense is a natural expansion of our routine assignment of protection and keeping law and order. In our headquarters, existing facilities for police purposes can be quickly and effectively put to use in a national emergency or natural disaster type situation. Our siren warning system would function in emergency situations. Communication facilities linking police headquarters to key points in the community will be used in civil defense planning and operations. In the handling of crowds, national emergency would add a considerable burden, particularly in the critical movement to shelter period. This would be a police responsibility, and we carry on training and planning programs to meet civil defense needs in this area.
Mr. Mayor, in the sanitation department, our emergency assignment might include helping with decontamination. Contamination is caused by radioactive fallout material settling after a nuclear explosion. Decontamination of buildings and streets and equipment might be necessary before an area could be used for its intended purpose. Much radioactive fallout can be removed. Methods include hosing down the area with water or sweeping.
Gentlemen, essential to the disaster situation, whether natural or man-made, is a rescue capability, often the responsibility of the fire department. In any large-scale emergency, we would have to face the fact that numbers of people might be trapped in wreckage. In this town, we have our own rescue vehicle, equipped to handle a variety of disaster situations. The town paid for part of the cost of the vehicle, and the federal government contributed the rest as part of its program of providing funds for certain approved civil defense equipment.
Thank you, Chief. Public Works.
Mr. Mayor, our Public Works Department has the emergency assignment of keeping the town's facilities operating as normally as possible. Among other functions, we work with the town's engineering personnel and the utility companies in developing plans for standby services if this should become necessary. Public Works trucks used in road maintenance and for other purposes might be called into service for emergency transportation needs.
Thank you. And now, gentlemen, our information officer.
Public information is a vital element in civil defense operations. Now, in time of emergency, people have a great need to know what is happening. Now, my job is to see that the public is provided with survival information through every possible channel of communication.
As your civil defense director, I must stress the importance of being fully efficient in times of emergency. First, a shelter must be manned by efficient personnel who can provide leadership within the shelter. One of our shelter manager instructors has just come back from taking a course at a federal civil defense school. He's going to set up a training program here in town for shelter managers. Shelters should be adequately stocked with food, water, radiological, medical, and sanitation equipment. The federal government provides this survival support for licensed shelters. But it's up to us in local government to come up with any additional items, such as cots, chairs, or blankets, special foods, and medications.
Gentlemen, an item of vital concern. All of our local government civil defense activities may be conditioned by the radiological situation. Like the fallout shelter program itself, the radiological defense program is a product of the nuclear age. Now, our function in the time of enemy attack would be analysis and evaluation of the fallout radiation data and the providing of technical guidance in this area. Many of the people assigned to emergency tasks, such as firemen and policemen, are also trained in radiological monitoring. Our training situation gives us experience with sample radiological materials in controlled exercises.
In all of our emergency operations, the big need is for trained personnel. But most important of all, we need qualified instructors. The civil defense schools operated by the federal government provide a means of instructor training, and each municipality or rural community should see to it that training courses are set up in such vital civil defense subjects as shelter management, planning and operations, and radiological monitoring.
A meeting of skills and capabilities, plans for a pool of manpower and equipment with one goal: emergency protection for members of our family, for friends, for neighbors. Other talents and skills, too, will be brought into the civil defense picture by an enterprising local government. The clergyman, the welfare worker, the administrator, the merchant, all can assist in the emergency preparations. The heart of local civil defense operation is an emergency operating center which must coordinate emergency activities from a protected area. This town is one of many in the United States which is developing an effective civil defense program. Its emergency operating center is located in the basement of the municipal building. In time of disaster, the emergency operating center would be staffed with personnel assigned to the various civil defense functions. Information as to conditions outside would be received here and plotted on a map of the area indicating the disposition of the town's existing resources. From this chart, the Civil Defense Director could tell at a glance what must be committed to any particular area. Markers are coded to designate fire, police, ambulance, rescue, or other resources required in the distress area. At the administration desk, the Civil Defense Director takes charge of the activities. Vital to the Emergency Operating Center is a communications capability that links the center with key municipal facilities, radio stations, and county officials. Radio and telephone provide a network for the exchange of important emergency data. A potential source of communications for civil defense emergency is amateur radio activity. In many communities, ham operators are licensed to tie in their facilities with a civil defense network. Communications apparatus is tested periodically, with each municipality usually reporting to county or state control centers. A ready communications capability is invaluable in the disaster situation. When conditions permit, a mobile communications van may be used as a control center. Civil defense planning calls for an augmented communications network equipped to cope with a variety of critical needs. Supplementing the work of existing local government, which has inherent responsibility in emergency, may be the Red Cross, traditionally serving in disaster situations. Help may also be available from military personnel in the local community, wherever this would not interfere with the primary armed forces mission. Local business and industry are essential in providing the required shelter space. Federal government surveys approved portions of thousands of buildings throughout the nation as fallout shelters. Each building must be licensed with the owner's signature, indicating his approval for its use as a public shelter. This is the responsibility of local government. The shelter markings on the buildings in our cities and towns are symbols of an ever-expanding civil defense effort. Its success, perhaps the survival of our nation, will depend on how well each community organizes for and meets its emergency responsibilities. No one can predict whether this nation will ever be the victim of enemy attack. Nor do we know when or where natural disaster may strike. If and when these should occur, we must be ready to meet them. We will be ready only if the full potential of civil defense is understood and acted upon by the federal and state governments, and especially by local government and all persons charged with community responsibility. Local government can and must meet the challenge of the nuclear age. Communities all over the United States share a common problem and a common responsibility to develop within their existing local governments an expanded capability for the protection of their citizens in time of emergency.
Staff College in Battle Creek, Michigan. That's interesting. I wonder if there's like Kellogg's somehow had something to do with that. Anyhow, yeah. Don't worry, general public. The bureaucracy will still survive. All the paperwork that you need to fill out as you succumb to radioactive fallout, it's all been planned out. You're good. We have charts. We have everything. That's what those civil defense films feel like to me. Is it's all about the paperwork. The paperwork will survive, and because of that, then our country will survive because it's built on paperwork. All right, I got one more film set up for you on the scanner. This is Iowa's Proud Heritage, Your State Universities. Enjoy.
There's not much prairie left in Iowa. Yet this is what most of Iowa looked like when it gained statehood in 1846. There were no roads, no railroads, just grass, prairie flowers, and more grass. Yet somehow on these grasslands, homes would have to be built, food and clothing provided. Even with so much to do, it was determined that if Iowa were to grow and prosper, it must have public higher education available at low cost to educate teachers and other professionals for the frontier society, and especially to provide opportunities for Iowa young people to prepare for productive lives. The University of Iowa was established by the first General Assembly just 59 days after Iowa became a state. Another milestone was the establishment of Iowa State University, when Iowa became the first state to take advantage of the Morrill Act, whereby a federal land grant provided startup funds to teach agriculture and engineering at the college level. Again, in 1876, in a renovated home for Civil War orphans, a state normal school, later to become the University of Northern Iowa, was established to meet the need for teachers for the public schools of the state. And so, low-cost public education was already a major goal. Low cost because these institutions were to be available to all, rich or poor. Thus, as covered wagons continued westward, Iowa pioneers began raising the buildings in which their sons and daughters could learn to heal, to build, to teach, to make laws, and to farm. But beyond providing for learning, more was required of these important institutions. The universities were expected not only to transmit knowledge, but to search out new knowledge and to make it available to all who could use it. To this day, research and public service are major characteristics of state universities, and the Iowa institutions have traditionally led in these efforts, many of them farm-related. From the past comes this example. "1915 was a good year for oats. Old threshing hands, as usual, were guessing the bushels per acre by watching how often the bushel counter tripped. It dumped so often that year that the yield was usually higher than the guess. 1921, the counter had slowed down a bit. 1925, still slower. 1927. Rust. Year after year, the rust was taking a heavy toll. That meant the painstaking work of cross-pollinating to develop the new varieties, and the equally painstaking work of testing each new variety for rust resistance. Long before soybeans replaced oats as a second crop, the rust-resistant varieties had been developed. One example of a university-based research gift to Iowa and the nation. Another example, this one of public service, the university hospitals and clinics, created late in the 19th century by the Iowa legislature. Then, as now, its purpose was to combine clinical education with health care services for those who couldn't otherwise afford it. Today, it is so developed that 2,000 patients a day are referred here. Over the past 40 years, a member of 1 out of every 2 Iowa families has been cared for here, some of them for such sophisticated services as laser eye surgery, kidney transplants, and heart catheterization. In short, it's a regional healthcare center with a national reputation for excellence. Service to the state and research, pushing back the frontiers of our knowledge, have become continuing traditions at the state universities. Some accomplishments of the recent past are associated with well-known names. Van Allen and radiation studies. Atanasoff and the computer. And the work goes on, both with the problems Iowans face today and those they are likely to face in the future. Tornadoes, simulated in a laboratory to increase our chances of survival in these destructive storms. Dust abatement research to make our country roads cleaner for the farm homes they serve. Solar electric design, a promising energy-conserving approach to heating our homes of the future. Okoboji Lakeside Laboratory, where the 3 state universities pursue a shared concern in Iowa's water, plants, and animal life. An expanded program in family practice to provide physicians for Iowa communities. Hand pollination of soybeans to meet world food needs by developing new varieties. New developments in the treatment of dental diseases. UNIQ, the University of Northern Iowa's Center for Urban Education, works with disadvantaged Iowans in Waterloo. The sulfur in Iowa coal, a critical problem facing the future of Iowa's coal industry. Firemanship training to prepare Iowa's volunteer firefighters. Getting facts on swine dysentery to learn how to control a major problem in pork production. Hydraulic research, studying how you cool a riverside atomic power plant without raising the water temperature. Anhydrous ammonia accidents. Agricultural medicine pools the talents of 2 state universities to make a safer, healthier life for farm families. These are but a very few of the multitude of activities associated with university education, and only with the state universities in Iowa. Furthermore, new industries have grown up, spin-offs from research at the universities. The universities also bring new levels of cultural experiences for Iowans. Rudolf Nureyev in Hancher Auditorium. And Seiji Ozawa and the New York Philharmonic Orchestra in the C.Y. Stevens Auditorium. But this is still only a part of the story. The major contribution of the Regent universities is the educated men and women who have studied in these institutions. What do all these graduates bring when they go into the towns, the shops, and the industries of the state? To find out, look at a typical county, one which represents the average of all the people and their occupations. We'll call this typical county Regent County. There you would find that of the 26 doctors in Regent County, 12 would have received their training at the University of Iowa. Of a total of 450 teachers, nearly half would have graduated from one of Iowa's 3 state universities. One member of that teaching profession is Barbara Corson, wife, mother, and assistant principal at Waterloo's West High School. Today's emphasis on continuing education gave her another opportunity.
And I again returned to UNI, where I had the opportunity to participate in the Specialist in Education program in school administration. At the end of last summer, I was qualified for state endorsement as a secondary principal, and at the end of next summer, I hope to receive my degree in school administration. So I've relied on UNI to open doorways for me that I didn't consider as a younger woman.
Regent County would have the services of 86 engineers. Of this number, 59 would be from Regent universities. And 18 lawyers out of a county total of 28 would be alumni of the University of Iowa. And continuing education is not limited to the teaching profession. A 1950 graduate, Judge Max R. Whirling of Iowa's 7th Judicial District.
I get back to the campus frequently to attend lectures and legal institutes and to use the excellent and extensive library at the College of Law and to visit with professors on particular points of law in which they are expert. In other words, to update and continue my legal education. These visits and the various publications of the College of Law, including the Iowa Law Review, constitute a very valuable service to those of us in the legal profession, a service which is enhanced by the many other fields which are related in one way or another to the law and which are found only in a complex university such as the University of Iowa.
As Regent County builds, it needs architects. Half of them would be Iowa State University graduates. There would be many farmers and agribusinessmen, and in today's world, an increasing percentage have had university training. Richard L. Smith, president of the State Bank in Fort Dodge, a graduate of Iowa State University.
Banking is an ever-changing business today, and it's ever-changing because the needs and requirements of our customers are ever-changing. And we, in the banking business, must constantly keep ourselves abreast of their business, the changes that occur, so that we can be at least as equally well-informed as are they. One of the sources that enable us to do this is the resource information and the assistance that is available to us from the Regent institutions. For example, the Iowa Bankers Association, in conjunction with the Iowa State University people, hold a 2-week school over a 3-year period that's available to young officers to assist them in gaining new knowledge in the agricultural field.
What's the ratio among dentists? Out of 12 in Regent County, 10 would be graduates of the University of Iowa. There would be nurses, lawmakers, merchants, ministers, public officials, musicians, and publishers. Altogether, there would be nearly 900 graduates of 3 institutions in our typical county, and 395 students from the county currently enrolled in the 3 universities. Fred Moraine, longtime publisher of the Jefferson Bee and Herald, with his son and assistant publisher Rick Moraine. The Moraines are both graduates of the University of Iowa.
I just don't see how communities like Jefferson and Greene County could operate in Iowa if we didn't have access to the graduates of the regent universities. By and large, the great percentage of our leadership is trained in our 3 state universities. Practically all of our professional people, our doctors, our dentists, our lawyers, our engineers, veterinarians, teachers, practically all of our teachers come from Iowa schools, and many of them from the regent universities. We did some figuring the other day, and it's amazing, but practically 5% of the people in Greene County have either graduated from or are now attending the 3 regent universities. And this is to say nothing of the additional people who have attended there but who have not earned degrees yet. I'm serious. If Iowa communities are to remain vital and progressive, they're going to have to continue to have increasing numbers of regent-trained people.
Iowans have many reasons to be proud of their state universities, and down through the years have supported them well, both in resources and in good governance. Iowa established its State Board of Regents in 1909, the 2nd state to take this step. 9 private citizens from throughout the state were appointed to assure coordination among its public universities, full return on the educational dollar, and the avoidance of unwise duplication. Today, these same concerns guide their successors. The president of the board, from Harlan, Mary Louise Peterson. An attorney, vice president of a utility company from Davenport, Donald Shaw. A newspaper publisher and former Foreign Service Reserve officer from Sheridan, John Baldridge. A banker and former member of the State Board of Public Instruction from Wellman, Stanley Barber. A former state senator, farm manager, and businessman from Emmitsburg, S.J. Brownlee. A community leader from Oskaloosa, Margaret Collison. An attorney and president of a Waterloo company, Harry Slife. A law student at the University of Iowa from Manchester, Stephen Zumba. A patent attorney and former legislator from Clarion, Ray Bailey. Governing bodies like this one, appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate, have set educational and fiscal policy for Iowa's public universities, as well as the Iowa Braille and Sight Saving School and the Iowa School for the Deaf. Iowans have traditionally placed high value on education. It has received serious and sympathetic concern from lawmakers in the General Assembly. They, among others, are increasingly aware of new problems which have entered the picture and for which solutions are pressing. Runaway inflation is one of these. Inflation is tough on everyone, but it hits universities particularly because of their prolonged budgeting process. For example, a classroom building planned in 1973 is approved by the General Assembly in 1974, goes to construction in 1975, for completion in 1977. No forward planning can take into account inflation's effects during that time. The building, to last 100 years, is forever inadequate. The same is true for operating expenses. Inflation will leave its mark on society, but only greatest vigilance will prevent it from leaving our universities in a permanently weakened condition. Also, although Iowans continue to look to their regent universities as the capstone of their educational system, the state is spreading its educational dollars over far more territory, including more than 50 vocational, community, and private institutions. As important as they are, these schools are not interchangeable with the state universities. 8 years ago, Iowa was committing 23% of its general fund to its public universities. Now it is down to 14.5%, and yet enrollments are over 20% higher than they were 8 years ago. As a result, in Iowa and throughout the nation, more and more of the financial burden falls on the students. 20 years ago, the fees paid by Iowa residents covered about 1/10 of the cost of their education at the state institutions. Today, their fees must cover nearly 1/3 of the cost. There's irony and a great injustice in such a tendency. It doesn't change matters much for the poor, where low family incomes make them eligible for financial assistance. And it doesn't hurt the children of well-to-do families, for whom a few hundred additional dollars may be no great burden. But for the middle class, it can be a heavy burden indeed. The state universities are made up largely of students whose parents are in this middle-income group. They are not eligible for substantial financial aid. They cannot meet spiraling tuition costs without great hardship. Today, these middle-income families who contribute so much to Iowa find that early goal of accessibility to college fading away for their children. If Iowa is to solve its critical problems of an aging population, energy and the environment, rural decline, health care, and transportation, it will need a great deal more, not less, help from its state universities. There is no other ready source of brain power in so many areas of advanced knowledge as is to be found on these 3 campuses. Here again, Mary Louise Peterson, President of the Board of Regents.
The history of this state, the concern and the traditions of its people, in the past and today, have been to maintain high-quality universities. I have a deep concern that I would like to share with you, and that is that we follow the traditions of the past and that we continue to preserve quality public institutions in our state. That we are provided the funds so that we can attract outstanding faculty to teach the young people of this state, that we are able to provide adequate classrooms, that we're able to replace obsolete equipment, that we are able to provide, in essence, quality education for the young people and the mature continuing education students in this state. I am concerned that we are able to provide opportunities for young people. The basic philosophy, traditionally, from the past, from today, and hopefully into the future, will be that we are able to provide educational opportunities for large numbers of students at a reasonable cost.
The Regent universities, strong in their achievements, responsible for unique contributions to the vitality of the state, need your strong and continued support. From the time of the prairies to the present, Iowans have placed high value on their low-cost public universities. Their good judgment has been confirmed by the performance of these outstanding institutions.
Yeah, that was what it was. It's a wonderful little time capsule, and it certainly speaks to that slow, the funding that started going away for public education, and definitely dropped off in the 80s. But fascinating nonetheless. Incredibly boring, I'm sure, to some of you, but for me, it's like, oh, it's an interesting little time capsule. I actually did a show, University of Iowa City. I kind of was missing the thing. And the films that I've been getting boxes from recently have come from Northern Iowa University, or University of Northern Iowa. I think it's University of Northern Iowa, Uni. So it seems appropriate that I have this film from there. And I wonder if they even have a copy of it. It's interesting. So yesterday I showed, the last film I showed was Inside Out. And I pulled that film because somebody is writing a book about the Inside Out series and NIT. And he was blown away by the film when I showed it to him. And he said nobody has that film except for us. Like, he doesn't know of any other entity that has the film. So there we go. It's sometimes little unique gems show up in AV Geeks. And sometimes kind of dull gems show up. But thanks for tuning in today. Thanks for sticking around. We'll be back again tomorrow. It's Friday. And if you like what you saw, hit the thumbs up button. You can also watch other things on our channel, and we get ad revenue for that. And that actually helps pay for 4 storage units that we have off-site, and that we're slowly migrating stuff out of the archive so that we can do some renovation work. I'll have more details about that as we get closer. But you can support us also by going to using the Super Thanks option. Thank you, Kevin, for that, for celebrating that 1915 was a good year for oats. Before the rust came. You can also go to ko-fi.com/avgeeks or patreon.com/avgeeks. Those are ways to donate as well. But at the very least, watch our show. Chime in. Tell other people about it. But yes, we'll be back again tomorrow. Everybody have a great rest of your Thursday. And we'll see you soon.